This video highlights an exchange between Senator Whitehouse, a Democrat from Rhode Island, and Federal Reserve Chairman Bernanke on March 3, 2009 at a Senate Budget Committee meeting. There are 2 points to highlight concerning the use of a budget projection. The first is Senator Whitehouse comparing actual results to a budget projection without evaluating the projection's assumptions. In the world of financial analysis, Senator Whitehouse's analysis is meaningless. 2. Chairman Bernanke responds focusing on the unreasonable revenue assumptions in the projection and in the process discredits Senator Whitehouse.
Senator Whitehouse.
Thanks again, Chairman. Mr. Bernanke, during the course of this hearing, we've heard a number of my colleagues express real dismay about the amount of additional borrowing that's going to be required to address what I think all responsible economists concede is a fiscal emergency that the country is in, or certainly would be in without this. As I recall, at the end of the Clinton administration, we had an economy, a budget in surplus, and we were headed by most estimates, including CBO's, to be a debt-free nation. And then for 6 years, before control in Congress changed, you had Republicans controlling the House, the Senate, and the White House. And during that time, according to our projections, if you take the difference between the CBO projected budget on the day they took office and where things actually went, it's a $7.7 trillion difference, a $7.7 trillion hole that I refer to as the Bush debt, and that many of my colleagues supported at the time. We had a vice president who was at the time saying deficits don't matter. And now we hear these expressions of dismay about lending to solve this crisis from people who didn't seem to mind when $7.7 trillion in debt was being run up to finance tax cuts for the rich, to finance a war in Iraq, and other things. Tell me, had we not gone that route, had we started, let's not even give credit for the projections that would have taken us into an actual national debt-free position. Let's just say we had zero national debt when we went into this crisis, instead of the trillions and trillions of national debt that were run up. What would our position be in responding to this crisis had we started at zero instead of, what is it now, 9 trillion?
Well, I think it's evident that you start with lower debt, then you have more debt capacity, and it's easier to raise money from both domestic and foreign lenders. I think one of the features of the President's budget, which I think is interesting and constructive, is that it includes, for example, some, as I understand it, some general provision for disasters and things of that sort. It recognizes the uncertainties that we do face in a normal budgeting process. So I can only agree with you that one of the benefits of keeping a low debt to GDP ratio and maintaining near balanced budgets under normal circumstances is that you have the flexibility to respond to a Katrina or to something like this, which is many times larger.
Looking back, do you believe it was prudent as a nation to have run up, as I calculated, the $7.7 trillion in debt during those
It's a very complicated
years?
It's a very complicated calculation, Senator, and I can't do it all here. But I think the tax revenues in the late 90s were partly not sustainable. They came from the stock market boom, and we know now that was not sustainable. So that was, I think, the idea that we would be debt-free. I think that was somewhat exaggerated. It's true that the revenue to GDP ratio did fall in the early part of the Bush presidency. It did come back up to something closer to historical averages. So it's a complicated issue, but I do agree that in thinking about the future and recognizing that there are unanticipated emergencies that can occur, whether they be natural disasters or financial disasters or whatever, it's positive. It's a good idea to have some fiscal capacity and reserve. We've got countries around the world now that really can't do fiscal policy because they haven't got the debt capacity to do it.
Thank you.